قال قائل منهم لا تقتلوا يوسف وألقوه في غيابة الجب يلتقطه بعض السيارة إن كنتم فاعلين قالوا يا أبانا ما لك لا تأمنا على يوسف وإنا له لناصحون أرسله معنا غدا يرتع ويلعب وإنا له لحافظون قال إني ليحزنني أن تذهبوا به وأخاف أن يأكله الذئب وأنتم غافلون قالوا أكله الذئب إنا إليك خاسرون صدق الله العلي العظيم. محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to continue learning, reflecting on the ayat of the Holy Quran and begin to learn, inshallah. Prior to the month of Ramadan, we started Surah Yusuf, and the beginning of the surah was regarding the dream that Yusuf alayhi salam had, and he shared with his father, and we went over the beginning of the events with his brothers, where his father warned him not to share his dream with his father and with his brothers, as they would plot for him. Shaitan is definitely an enemy of mankind. Said that this is because their plot would be the initiative or the instigator of their plot would be their nafs. So it's their plot. But obviously, whenever we have a weak position of nafs and nafs al-amara, that is when shaitan is using our weakness against us. And therefore, he starts his whispering and helps with the plotting. We came to the part where initially they said we should kill him. So imagine how jealousy could lead one to the point where they're willing to commit such a crime of killing. So the ayah starts, ayah number 9. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Uqtulu Yusufa." In the words of these brothers, one of them has suggested it, kill Yusuf. Their intention is we can get the love of our father without any kind of competition or any obstacle. Yusuf is a major obstacle. From the attention and the love of your father will be towards you. And this is one side. The other issue is they know it's a sin. So how do we fix that? They said, okay, we can do this, and that would be the last sin. I shared. It's whenever people want to justify something wrong that they're doing, they might say, last one. And The right approach is, if it's wrong, just stop it. There's no need for last. So this one sin, and after that we will be amongst the righteous. The next ayah is the response or the suggestion from another one. Quran doesn't say it. And therefore it may not be necessarily significant. Obviously, if it was significant, Quran would have told us this is who said it. So you can put the names yourself. Now, some suggested that this was based on riwayat. They said it was Lawi who said this, or Rawim, or Yehuda. Regardless, one of the brothers said, don't kill Yusuf, don't kill him. لا تقتل يوسف. وألقوه في غيابة الجب. Rather, throw him in the place of the well where it's hidden. غيابة الجب is something that you don't see, the unseen. So in the well, there's an area that they cannot see. Throw him there. And what was his intention? Instead of killing him, send him away with a tribe or a caravan that would take him. So he said, وَأَلْقُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ يَلْتَقِطْهُ بَعْضُ السَّيَّارَةِ. Some travelers would grab him, will take him. If you are doing anything, إِن كُنتُمْ فَاعِلٍ. So it seems he was not even in agreement with any harm towards Yusuf alayhi salam. And therefore he's saying, if you're going to do something, instead of killing him, do the following. Put him somewhere in the well. And al-Jub here suggests that he is referring to a specific well, not any. So he doesn't say a well, he says the well. In other words, he refers to a specific well, perhaps knowing that it's a well that's nearby the travelers. So it's used as a station for the travelers, that they will come and get water as they're traveling. So he says, if you're going to do something. An important lesson here, and as we said, it's important to reflect and learn lessons. So a very important lesson here. This brother was not fully in agreement with the rest of the brothers. He was not basically agreeing to killing him for sure, or even harming him. In kuntum, if you are going to do something, even harming him. However, it is so powerful when one sits with people of a certain attitude, behavior, caliber, simple people. There's so much influence that despite the fact that he was not in agreement to harm him, kill him, he couldn't stop them or could not even not participate with them. Because eventually, when they're going to do anything, he has to participate. Non-participation means what? He doesn't go with them. Non-participation means when they tell a lie, obviously the father is going to ask them. And so they have to be all in agreement. If one of them says, no, that's not the correct story, then obviously the rest are exposed. So in order not to expose them, he has to participate. And that's the power or the how strong the influence of people who we associate with. Now you might say he has no choice, it's his brothers. We will leave that, okay? But yes, even if it's your brother, Islamically, if one brother is on the wrong path, you cannot support. Rather, you help them by guiding them, advising them. And if one sits in a gathering where there is, for instance, najwa, Quran has the concept of whispering, specifically when people are whispering to plot against somebody. If one is in that position, sitting in that gathering is problematic. It's strengthening that group. If he was to say from the beginning, I'm sorry, I'm not going to participate. I don't want to even hear your suggestions. I'm out of this. They would not feel strong enough. They feel, okay, there's a weak link here. If we go ahead and do what we're about to do, he will expose us, or he could expose us. The fact that he does not want to participate, does not want to go out with us, will expose us to the Father, but they have to come together. So it's very, very important to consider who we associate with and who we consider our peers. So that's the discussion between them. And as we mentioned, Quran gave details of even the secret discussions between them. Next, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ayah 11, moves on to their conversation with their father, trying to convince him. Obviously, as we mentioned, every ayah, every part of the story that is shared, it is significant. There are lessons there are significant lessons that we need to learn through it. The next part, قالوا يا أبانا, they came to the father and they said, our father, Ya Abana. This is a very, actually, calling him with specifically Abana, like together up, is to basically try and get on his soft side, okay? Emotional and soft side. What did they say? Malaka. So obviously, it seems, based on this ayah, that Yaqub alayhi salam was very protective of Yusuf, that he would not normally let them be with him by themselves. So the beginning of the question is, مَا لَكَ لَا تَأْمَنَّا. تَأْمَنَّا in recitation has to be recited in a very specific way, because it is what we call al-idgham al-kabir. Idgham to the point where even in writing, the letter is completely gone. Which letter? So originally it was ta'manuna. The word was ta'manuna, because the word comes from amn. Amina, ya'manu, ta'manu, and na for us. Okay, ta'manu, na. So the pronoun is na, meaning us, and the word is ta'manu. One of the noons is completely dropped. That's why you see only one, yes? So this is called al-idgham al-kabir. It's not even written anymore. So it became ta'manna. So they said, مَا لَكَ لَا تَأْمَنَّا عَلَى يُوسُف. So obviously, he was not, before, he would not leave him with them by themselves, because he was protective, and it was obvious to them. Why? Recall the story that we mentioned of the poor man who was not fed, who was fasting, and the angel came to him and told him that this is going to happen. You're going to be tested. He knew it's going to be through them. And he recognized his children and their jealousy. So he was already worried that they would harm him. And then they said, after you know asking him the question, وَمَا لَكَ لَا تَأْمَنَّ عَلَى يُوسُفَ, they said, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. Surely we want what's best for him. Nusх is when you advise someone with what's best for them. So your intention is what's best for them. So we don't intend any harm. Rather, we intend goodness and what's best for him. He's our brother, and we intend goodness. So from our angle, we're giving you assurance that we want what's best for him. وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. Further, they said, أَرْسِلْهُ مَعَنَا, send him with us. غَدًا, tomorrow. يَرْتَعْ وَيَلْغِي. يَرْتَعْ is regarding the basically eating or snacking, if you wish. So eating certain things that are, yarta is when it's used for cattle as well, when you take them to the fields. And during certain seasons, they find things that are not the average of what they consume. So that's rata. So he could have, in suggesting that he can have certain berries and certain fruits that would not otherwise be available. It's not things that we would eat. You know, you go in the field, especially in spring, you find certain flowers that are consumable, certain leaves that are consumable, herbs, fruits, whatever it is. So that's yarta. And the other one is yala, that he would play and have fun. Then the next thing is وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. And surely we are for him protectors. لَحَافِظُونَ. Surely. La. So in the first ayah, or the first statement that the Quran mentions from the reward, is that they promised وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَنَاصِحُونَ. Here, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Nusх is that they intend what's best for him. Hifz is that they protect him from external things. So they're giving him reassurance from every end. We will not harm him ourselves because we want what's best for him. And we will not allow anything else or anyone else to harm him because we surely are going to protect him. Now the father responds. And again, it is amazing how Quran puts the response from Yaqub alayhi salam, very, very important, happy response considering their feelings, not to hurt their feelings. The significance of those lanasrihun and lahafadun, we will come to them afterwards, inshallah. We'll come back. Those two ayat where they were basically arguing and debating with their father to convince him to allow them to take Yusuf alayhi salam. However, the next part is the response of Yaqub alayhi salam. قَالَ إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُنِي. He said, in me. First, he starts with himself. So he is suggesting that it's not your issue. Okay? It's not about you. It's about me. Okay, very, very subtle point here. When he's responding, he's not putting the blame on them why he doesn't feel safe to send or comfortable to send Yusuf alayhi salam with them. And why is he protective of him? So he's making it to be his personal issue. Okay? قَالَ إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُنِي. It saddens me. Okay? And he starts with envy. He could have said, for instance, if the ayah said, إِنَّهُ لَيَحْزُنُنِي. Surely it saddens me. No. He says, إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُ. So surely it is me who it will sadden me. Now you might say it doesn't, in English it may not make much sense, but the emphasis here is that he starts with saying it's about me. إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُ. This is again one of the subtle points that many Mufassirin miss, but some of our great Mufassirin, including Alamat al-Tabai, he points this out. It could have been إِنَّهُ لَا يَحْزُنُ, but it's not. قال إِنِّي لَا يَحْزُنُنِي. It is about me. That you would take him and تذهب به. And then he gave a reason, a suggestion. وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ. I'm worried that the wolf will take him, eat him. وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ. وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ. Yes, you are promising that you protect him and you don't want any harm from him, for him. However, I'm worried that this could happen while you're neglectful of him, while you're not there seeing him. وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ. Now they don't want to, that could have finished there. He gave them his personal fear and an external reason why this is justified. Nevertheless, they insisted, and now they give more promises. Remember earlier, they gave two promises. One, surely we will want what's best for him. We will not harm him. Two, surely we will protect him from anything external. Now even further, more promise or more assurance. قالوا لئن أكله الذئب ونحن عصبة. This is basically them questioning the statement of their father in a very reassuring manner. How could that even be possible? That is their response. And is this even possible, what you're saying? That but they put that question or that statement in a question, questioning his suggestion with further promises or even more of a square. In the end, they say, إِنَّا إِذًا لَخَاسِرُونَ. La, here they say lamul qasam, because this is about not the past, the future. If it was about the past, for example, when we say inni la yahzunni, it is our present state. He is confirming that this is how I feel. Lam for confirmation. Or for in lana sahun la hafadun. All of those could be seen as present thing of or lam for nasihun. We surely want what's best for him. Here for surely. For la khasirun, it's considered lam qasam. That they're swearing that they are the biggest losers, or they're losers, if that was to happen to him. Okay, they're swearing that they would be losers, considered losers, if that was to happen to him. Meaning what? If the wolf was to eat him. Usba, we said, is what? Usba is a group of strong men. Okay, so they say 7 or 10 group of strong men. So they are a group of very strong men. They used that earlier. Remember when they were talking amongst each other, and then they said that our father prefers Yusuf over us. They said, لَيُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا مِنَّا وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ. So they said Yusuf and his brother are more dear to their father than us, while we are usbah, meaning we are strong men, useful. We go out and do all the work. So what does Yusuf do? So we are usbah. Here, again, they're repeating to their father, using the term, قالوا لئن أكله الذئب ونحن عصبة. While we are a group of men, strong men, a group of strong men. إنا إذا لخاسرون. In that case, we swear that we are losers. That's how bad it is. Now, if we put those ayat together, all the assurances, all the promises, swearing, using all these different tactics or techniques to convince their father and take Yusuf with them. The image that we get here, after knowing, well, all of us, we mostly know the story of what happened. What do you describe a person who's doing all this? You say this is a very cunning, very, they are smart, yes? There is a description of Muawiyah, la'natullah alayh, who was known to be, and his friend Amr ibn As, who were known to be what? Very cunning, yes. When the Imams of Ahlul Bayt looked at them, they said they don't have aql. What they have is some sort of cunningness. The term in Arabic that was used, the Imam says, تِلْكَ هِيَ النَّكُرَاتُ تُشْبِهُ الْعَقْلِ وَلَيْسَتْ بِعَقْلٍ. That is, now nakura, he named it some, so basically you could say it means something that resembles intellect, a power of adding things up, calculations, like computing. Okay, it looks like aql, but it's not aql. If you were to give computers, AI, okay, nowadays, a task, your task is to convince somebody to do something, or to, to convince somebody that you are honest, for instance, or to convince somebody to do something. If the computer was given all the, today, AI, give the computer all the input about the father situation, the brother situation, the feelings of the father, all of the surrounding circumstances, and say, give me the best speech that I could convince the father. Okay? Computer can do that. Now, do you say computer is smart? We call it artificial. Yes? Why? Because it resembles intelligence. Okay? It's not real intelligence. When I first was introduced to this, it was many years ago. I was doing my degree, and one side, back then it was a side thing. Now it's a major thing in many degrees. Yeah. A side topic that we were studying was artificial intelligence. And one of my biggest arguments with the professors at the time was that it's not intelligence. You keep saying it's basically doing the same thing, adding, putting information together and putting it to, presenting it in one way, in any case. So you give it the task and it has to complete the task. Now, these brothers, the task is devilish. Killing or taking away their brother from their father. They're doing all this, very smart, cunning talk, planning and plotting. But is this really happening? if they were to think properly. First of all, aql is not complete if it does not recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God in the equation. That aql is not complete. So if somebody knows that God is there, even for worldly gains, they know that this is not the way, because God is in control. So if we want something, get it from the permissible means. You want the love of your father, be very kind, be loving, have a special relationship with God, seek forgiveness for your errors. Obviously, the father had seen that Yusuf alayhi salam is this innocent soul who is wali from awliya Allah, and had seen certain characteristics in the brothers, jealousy and so on. Therefore, he warned the brother. Don't tell your brothers. Why? Because they will plot against you. How did he know? He had seen, obviously, characteristics, perhaps jealousy being a major one, that led to this, led them to the point where children of a prophet, they are the children of a prophet of God, knowing how their father, as a prophet of God, feels about Yusuf alayhi salam, were willing to either kill him or completely abandon him, sell him as a slave. According to some narrations, they came back. Now, Quran doesn't say how what exactly happened, and it's not clear how exactly the transaction happened, who was the one who bought him or sold him. But the hadith explained that they came back to where he was, and they made a transaction with the tribe that was taking him. So the tribe found him, and when they were taking him, these brothers came back so that they can assure these guys that he shouldn't come back to town. Because if they took him out of the well, he could have said, okay, if my brothers did this to me, let me go back. Okay, let me find my way back home. Instead, they came to give reassurances to the caravan that's traveling that this is a slave and he ran away. And the story that, according to the narrations, is there. So they were willing to go as far as selling him as a slave, allowing him to go and live a life of slavery. A prophet, a son of a prophet. For them, they didn't know he's a prophet, but a son of a prophet. And they're children of a prophet. And they are still conscious of the presence of God, in the sense that they said, this will be the last thing we do. And after this, after this, you will be righteous. This is how insaf, who does not use their intellect, one of the teachers of Akhlaq, our great scholars of Akhlaq, he says, a mind and a heart and a life that is empty of God is not a life of a servant of God. A mind and the heart and the life, that's how it's basically like a chain. If the mind is empty of God, they're plotting all this without consideration of God. And their heart is not in line with pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're trying to achieve their goals. And therefore, this is their actions. This is not a life of this is not these are not the characteristics of a servant of God. Therefore, their intention to seek repentance or to become righteous afterwards is error. It's from the beginning, it is an error, because they're not mindful of God their hearts are not trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and essentially their actions. So قالوا لئن أكله الذئب عن أصبر إنا إذا لخاسرون. They gave all the reassurances. Any questions so far? Comments? Yes.
I read from the commentary here, and it says that from the camp also had a dream whereby he saw that it was on a mountain and it is from a valley and 10 wolves. So I can see the wolf that is referring to this verse. Means 10 wonders as well as specific wolves.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, there is narration that he had a dream. And based on the dream, Yaqub alayhi salam had the dream. And based on the dream, he made the suggestion of death. So there's a question, and some suggest that there is a narration. Others say even if that narration is not 100% accurate, it was his suggestion based on basically trying to give a reason outside of himself, and almost like an excuse for not wanting to allow him to go with them, which is natural for a father who's trying to keep peace in his household. So he's trying to avoid them feeling like, okay, there's something wrong about them, or he doesn't trust them. He doesn't want to tell them that he doesn't trust them. Instead, he says, it's a problem about me and an external issue that is also common. So some of our Mufassirin have not even mentioned that narration because it is not from our sources. But regardless, even if it is there, it could
just be. The wolf would refer to either
the brothers or what the. Yes. Yeah, thank you. That. So then we go to the next ayah. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ. This lamma, in narratives, in Arabic story narratives, the use of this lamma here is very significant. When, so the ayah starts fa, and then lamma, then or therefore when. But this lamma is significant in narratives, in storytelling, and it is suggested that it's used when you want to skip certain things that you don't want to share. It's just too much to share. Okay. For instance, in this case, the idea wasn't to kill him. So if it was to kill some, let's say there was somebody telling a story about how somebody was murdered. Okay. They say, okay, there were people, they attacked, several people ganged up against him. And then, فَلَمَّا قُتِلْ, and then when he was killed. So what did we skip? How exactly it happened. Okay, the details of how it happened. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, He says, فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. When they took him and collectively decided, أجمعوا, together decided to put him in the area in the well, in the hidden area in the well, في غيابة الجُبِّ, skipped all the details of how. Okay. Some of you may have seen the series, yes? And in the series, they showed a lot of beating and whatever else, yes? The Mufassirin, they say all of this was suggested but skipped with this part. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't go further. It is sinful enough, it is ugly enough that they decided to put him in the well and let him, let his father be separated from him and let him be separated from his father. That is sinful enough to now discuss the details of how this part happened. So how they took him, and so the suggestion here is that there must be significant things, yet very difficult to even share there. So Quran skips it, skips some of those details, goes from فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا, when they took him and they decided وَأَجْمَعُوا أن يجعلوا في غيابة الجب وأوحينا إليه لتنبئنهم. Immediately goes now to Yusuf himself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving him some comforting. He's a servant, yes, عبدا من عبادنا. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his servants, he does not leave them alone. أليس الله بكاف عبدا. Isn't God sufficient for his servant? Imagine in this difficult situation, brothers dragged him. He's a young boy, 10 more or less, 7, 8, 10 years old, taken away from his father, knowing that the father told him, your brothers could have a plot against you. Now drag, God knows what they did to him and what went on between them. They want to do something, the brother obviously would say, why are you doing this to me? You know, what about innocent? He has done absolutely nothing. So all this is skipped. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to say, this is just too much. Censorship. And I may have shared this before. In the past, media here, in the overall media in the world, used to censor or blur certain scenes. Recently, they had changed. And it was, to me, it was a shock. How there were assassinations at certain scenes, then the media shared it fully. You know, some stabbing, gunshots, and it was all over the news with minimal or no censorship. The complete scene. This is devilish. This is dangerous and devilish. Whoever is behind it definitely is playing a devilish game long. Otherwise, we have learned from Quran, from Hadith, from the lives of the prophets, all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their ways, and Anbiya and the Imam Bayt, that we should, our speech, our sharing of details should be censored. Certain sensitive things we should not be shared. Even sinful acts should not be shared. We don't share them anybody unless we are seeking help from somebody. In Islam, you don't go and do confessions. We don't have confessions. If you're seeking help from somebody, that's a difference. However, back to the ayah, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is comforting. Despite all that he's going through, wahy is there. Now, whether he saw the angel or heard the angel, but there was wahy to him. And it's clear wahy, not something that, okay, just some, and you know, sometimes wahy could be, as some may see it or may suggest, that it's just an idea that came to his mind. When wahy is a clear, basically a clear occurrence that's going to happen, that's no longer just some ideas that came to his mind. So what happened there? وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. So either the angel speaking to him with him seeing, or just hearing, that the angel clearly revealed to him, or it was revealed to him, that you will. So this is not your last incident with them, last time with them. In Farsi, we have a saying, it's humans, mountains don't meet, but humans meet. Adam to Adam, that they will meet. You will see them. The wahi came to him that you will see them. You will, not only you will see them, لا تنبئنهم. You will inform them about what they're doing now. بأمرهم هذا وهم لا يشعرون. While they do not feel it, perceive it, conceive it. So now the question is, وهم لا يشعرون, in reference to the wahi then, or to what would happen later on. There's a difference in, there are different suggestions. What does it mean, وهم لا يشعرون? So the wahi came to him at that point. Yusuf alayhi salam was revealed to at that point. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ. You will surely inform them. بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا, about what they're doing right now. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Either وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, right then, that they're not aware, or at that point, they were not aware that he was being revealed to. That is one suggestion. So that is one way to see it. The other way is to say that you will tell them while they don't feel it or perceive it, recognize it. In other words, when you do come to tell them, initially they don't recognize you. That is how some explained it. It seems, wallah, based on what some of our mufassirin have suggested or more lean more towards, it seems like it was happening right then and there while they were doing what they were doing, that wahi happened to him. And that is what the ayah is saying, وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Because later on, when you tell them, they will know. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Maybe before you tell them, they don't recognize you. They know what they said is, when it came to the point where they came begging him. He was a king at the time, or he was in charge, treasurer of the king. And they came in a very weak position, and they were saying, Ya ayyuhal aziz, massana wa ahlana al-dhur, wa ji'na bi bida'atin muzjat. We came with very insignificant, material or stock of money, and we're asking you to be charitable with us. Give us the full, فَأَوْفِ لَنَا الْكَيْلَ وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا. Give us our full share, what we can get, and be charitable with us. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ. At that point, he said to them, do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother? So at that point, when they were weak and he was asking them, they didn't recognize him first. But soon they said, you are Yusuf. Afterwards. So some say this is one lash in reference to that point, when he comes back and gives them the news. However, what it seems is that wahi happened وهم لا يشعرون. He was being revealed to at that time. And this, I feel this is more personally, I feel it's more powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was comforting him. Wahi came to him as they were doing all the things that Quran skipped. وَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوا فِي غَيَابِ الْجُبِّ. They took him and decided to put him in. Now all the details are skipped, and during those details, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ, in the same ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, during those details, we revealed to him that you will tell them about what they're doing and the reality of what they're doing now. And this wahi happened, وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. This is, imagine, like they are committing this great sin, harming their brother and doing what they're doing to him. And at the same time, he is being comforted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be careful. And this is something for us to keep in mind. whenever we are in a position that, God forbid, we are in a position that somebody is being oppressed as a result of our actions, be careful. He could be wali from awliya Allah. One of the people that God has even revelation for them. Awliya Allah receive. How? That's a different story. There's a hadith that says, be careful of certain things that God has hidden. One of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hid his awliya amongst his people. His special, close servants. Wali, he hid them amongst his people. Don't you ever oppress anybody, harm anybody, or undermine anybody. They might be one of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine they are doing what they're doing, harming him and intending all the evil, and on the contrary, he is receiving wahy, revealed to and comforted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wajak, how are we going with time? Questions, okay.
The special status of God being that would be
Awliya Allah be amongst, that's a very good question. Can these awliya Allah be amongst the non-Muslims? Very good question. They might not they might be people who are not showing their faith for certain reasons. So it could be. We don't know. Okay, so we have to be kind to everyone. Yeah, and be careful with everybody. If they obviously awliya Allah, when they purify, He guides them to what's best. But at the same time, if they are better in certain positions to serve God in a way that perhaps, let's say, somebody is in a Jewish community, Christian community, and by them being what they are and hiding what they know as truth, they can serve God better. They might be in that position. So we need to be careful with everybody. There is, in fact, Quran gives us examples of those people. Can you think of an example in the Quran that somebody was hiding his faith amongst his people to help and save the prophet of God? Sorry? That is one example. Habib al-Najjar is one example. Son of Mu'min al-Fir'aun. Yeah, so Mu'min al-Fir'aun, Quran clearly says, يَكْتُمُ إِيمَانًا. A man who was hiding his faith. Okay, he said to the people of Fir'aun. And there are so many ayat from the words of Mu'min al-Fir'aun. It's amazing. So many ayat, the words of Mu'min al-Fir'aun. His words directly. He is speaking, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quoting him in so many ayat of the Holy Quran, guiding the people. Sometimes people are in those positions that we have to be respectful of everybody. Good people, any of them could be awliya in any position. Any other, you said two questions? Yeah.
what's not a what was this? It's widely policy of information.
Very good. So that's actually complaint because we don't get it quickly. Yeah. So the question is, everybody's being tested, and the prophets of God are being tested. Yusuf alayhi salam is also being tested, put through all these difficulties and tests. And so why is it that in his case, he was comforted very quickly? Okay, so in other words, why did we not, or many people don't get good question. First of all, أَأَنْتُمْ تَقْسِمُونَ رَحْمَةَ رَبِّكَ. Do we divide the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Secondly, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who is going to stand and who's going to be weak, and what would it take to go further in your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for many of us, if he gives us the answer from the beginning, if we know the why it's happening and how, and this is actually very good reflection, because this surah overall is comforting for all of us. Those who read Quran and read especially this surah is actually a comforting for everybody who's going through trials. Perhaps by at their time, and we'll learn how today we have forensic science. Yes, this surah has reference to it. Okay, very soon. In fact, if we get a chance, if not next session, inshallah, we'll talk about it. Has reference to it in the sense that when people lie to achieve something, lying, what happens is and they say, in Arabic, they say, "Habl al-kadhib qasir." It's short. The rope of lying is short. In other words, if you go down with a rope of lying, it's not going to be long enough. You're going to fall. In other words, it'll be exposed sooner or later. Why? Because this whole universe is synced. Everything in the universe is synced, working together. Anything that when you lie, you're suggesting that this is here and here as well. Impossible. At the same time, it's in two places. It's impossible. Okay? This is where you get exposed, because something somewhere will give way, and one will be exposed. Now, what am I trying to say here? At their time, they didn't have much, and yet they, with whatever they did, they got exposed. Today, with the experience that people got, hearing about the previous nations, what they did, people, if somebody wants to commit a crime today, obviously they wouldn't do the same thing as somebody who did it before and got caught. Yes? They will try and do something different. But what happened with science and technology? Today they have forensic science. Even then, they get caught. And every now and then, some new findings and people get caught. Okay? So the accumulative knowledge of humanity, of what happened in the previous nations, in itself is comforting for us. Today, if I'm going through some difficulty, I can look at, and this is often, there's the Farsi poet, he says, Yusuf ekno gashte bazaya, the Canaan, the lost Yusuf will go back to Canaan. Don't be sad, don't have grief. Okay? Don't worry. So when we're going through difficulty, we remember this. Remember this example. That there is some good that will come out of it. Yusuf alayhi salam became a king. With what? With their actions, literally. لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا. What they did led to him being the king, and they have to prostrate. Yeah? إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. It happened through their action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed that his position becomes a result of this very action. Okay. And God says to him, at that point. Okay. What had he been through by that point that he's had the wahi? I don't know. We just said that there was skipping. Yes? Answer.
Says the commentator, some commentators, that's point when he became a prophet.
Okay. Yeah. Because he received wahi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to that,
yeah. That's one suggestion. But do we believe that only prophets receive wahi? That's the people who believe that only prophets receive wahi. They made that suggestion. Okay? Because there are some who say only prophets receive wahi. So they said at that point he became a prophet. Allahu A'lam. Maybe he did, maybe not. And if he did not, he could still receive wahi.
Right.
And Fatima sallallahu alayha received wahi, whether they like it or not.
Right?
Sorry.
Providing him in comfort.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's perhaps telling him.
You will be.
Better than his mother.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he could have been even before. Okay, he may have received something before. Allah Akbar. But yeah, of course, that at that point, what is special at that point is that it's confirming that he received wahi. And that is why I said either saw or heard. Quran doesn't say saw or heard the malak. Some say that the prophets see the malaika, whereas others, they hear the malak. There's this distinction that whoever is not a prophet does not see the malak, but hears. And so this is why I made that earlier comment about how he may have heard the malak at that point or saw the malak at that point. What I mean, in a practical sense, either way, it doesn't make a difference. Whether a prophet or non-prophet can also see the malak, is there a problem with that? It doesn't make any difference. Okay, for a non-prophet to receive wahi and see the malak. However, some say, okay, no, only prophets can see the malak. Therefore, in this case, we may have just heard the malak. But can non-prophets receive wahi? According to the Quran, it's clear that they can. But yes, it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comforted him at that point. But again, the question is, how much did he receive prior to that comforting? So amidst all that he was getting from them, eventually وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ, we did this, wahi to him. But maybe a lot of things happened. You have to understand that we're talking about a journey that started in the morning and they came back in the evening. And I'm sure as soon as they got rid of him, they came back home. As soon as, yes, because that was the whole journey. Okay. So a whole day of torture that he had been through. Okay, let's say it's an hour or two of walking that they went. So now night has set. And you know, when shepherds go, when did they go? Early, right after Fajr, you know, sometimes before sunrise or right after. Why? Because it gets hot. They don't want to travel during the heat. They go and reach their destination. So they had gone from early in the morning, and their goal was, so as soon as they had it to themselves, all their real face would have shown up. And imagine, and you have to, you know, for them to let go of him in the well and leave him and hear his cries and go back, there's something leading to it. Okay, somebody who wants to commit the crime, they start with preparing themselves. Okay, so God knows what they did all the way until. So this is why at Mufassirin they say "Falamma" here is to get like cut all the censor all the stuff that cannot be even said. Okay, God knows what they did to him until they let go of him and went back. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ, and we revealed to him and comforted him. Yes.
Talk more about the censorship, because I think it comes up a lot in today's day and age, and there's a lot of questions or applications around it. One is things that display, and the things that we show, things like that. The other one is in use, and the idea of sometimes people feel like we need to know or show the detail to expose something which someone. So otherwise, maybe it would be. And then I think it also brings up the question of, for me, anyway, talking about Ashura, what happened there. And often people will add more details to get people to cry. And just there's so many applications to that question, and then also tying into what you were talking about in the forum about positive thinking and negative thinking.
Yeah.
It seems like in the verses, it's focusing very much on positive and what we shared us. But again, I feel like it's the opposite. So,
Yeah. That actually is big. This topic can be something that one go on and on about to establish the balance, because it's all about the balance. Quran tells us we have to be ummatan wasat. So it's all about keeping the balance. Where is the balance? And so you mentioned a few things. You mentioned censorship with regards to news. You mentioned censorship with games, and you mentioned censorship in terms of the narrative of Karbala and Ashura. So all of these things need to be assessed and you need to find where the balance should be or is. I personally, besides the day of Ashura, besides the actual day of Ashura, narrating certain details about the day of Ashura, I consider to be wrong to start with. And even on the day of Ashura, personally, I cannot narrate some parts of it. Okay, especially when it comes to the Imam and the last part of it. It's just too much. And I agree that unfortunately, some people they add, okay, instead of censoring, they're adding, and they feel comfortable to add even what is not confirmed, okay. And a lot of stories were made up in the process, and we need to be very careful about that. So the goal is, yes, the goal is to stir emotions, but stir emotions, legitimate emotions for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So first connect the people with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If we know who the Imam is, even the standing against the Imam, for somebody to stand against him and say to him that you rushed with the fire. In other words, like you're going to then the Imam asked, who is it? They said it's Hawza, then Ibn Hawza Tamimi. So the Imam says, Huzzahu bin Nar, because he is suggesting that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is going to hellfire. Okay? He burnt, that man burnt in the fire that the Imam had set behind the tent so that they don't attack from behind. Because that was his questioning. Why did you set the fire? That was one of the miracles on the day of Ashura. So even that is too much for somebody to say to the Imam that you're. So what about the things that they? So a lot of it is not. I think it's you need to be very, very careful about taking it in a way to just wrong. It's not. We're not speaking about the principles. The Imam is. If we recognize the Imam and the status, the position of the Imam, and we connect with him, then even the least things that they did would be hurtful enough for us to shed tears. And so I think it's important to stay away from anything that's fabricated stuff. When it comes to news and games, unfortunately, a lot of these games, we have to be very careful. Any games that are showing certain scenes that are, they show killings and so on, even with the blood. I think this is all wrong, and this should be all abandoned. It should be abandoned legally, even from governments being change this. Unfortunately, I don't know who's behind it and why, but it is not banned, and it's the way it is, almost desensitizing people. And this is why sometimes we see the shootings that happen in schools. This is why, the New Zealand, the shooting was almost like a copy of the games. Many people who watched the New Zealand shooting, it was almost like you're in a video game. The guy is playing a video game, literally. Disturb people playing video games, things now the real world is the same thing. So definitely that is negative, and as humans, yes, reality out there's a lot of negative things, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of his mercy, he makes us even forget Okay, one of the things that happen when traumatic things happen is that you forget. Okay, you have a blackout, a part of blackout, completely forget. I have forgotten the last, I will say, 5 or 10 minutes prior to one of the accidents that I had. I had an accident. Initially I forgot about a year. And then slowly it came back to me. But that last 5, 10 minutes, I simply cannot. It's a mental blackout. Things that happen leading to it, completely not. Okay. And people in traumas, it's known that people go through that basically almost blackout. Okay. And then when you come back to consciousness, that part, through His mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you forget it completely. So we shouldn't be, the one who's subjected to it forgets it, and then we come and remind them. That is why for families, even of the victims, often they say, for their sake, we shouldn't share certain things. And next thing now they have changed that. I think that that is something that we have to speak out of that. Say, no, human beings, we should not be exposed to this kind of negativity. And yes, it's out there. God, through His mercy, makes us forget it. And we need to forget it. We need to not. So we need to set some level of censorship. I think, yeah.
So it's from the video, the series. It said when the angel comes, prophet says the solution is in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Prophet says, what do you mean? The angel tells 5 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Those are by what you should call.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you please comment on that? You're referring to the 500 rather than 14 Masudi.
Yes.
5 fingers, 14 knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask through that, gets out from the clip.
Yeah. So there is a suggestion. Thank you for that. So in the movie, they showed that the angel was telling him to call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the 5 ma'soom, the Ashab al-Kisa, and the 14 ma'soomin. And we have a narration about this specific, and we have a general narration that all of Anbiya Allah, whenever they went through difficulty, and awliya, they were taught by Jibreel to call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by these names. The ship of Nuh alayhi salam sailed with the 5 names. And many other things it is confirmed in the riwayat that they called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by these names. There was a question that somebody recently asked me, since this was also brought up. They said, how is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran teaches us to ask Him, and the Imams often asked Him directly, yet we focus a lot on asking God through Ahlul Bayt. So is it okay? Is it not okay? So obviously both are fine. Obviously both are perfectly fine. We can ask God directly, or we can ask Him through the wasila. He says to us in the Holy Quran, and this surah has a confirmation of the wasila when the brothers of Yusuf eventually came to their father and asked him to seek forgiveness for them. Okay, so they put him as their wasila because they recognize he's a prophet of God. Yes, they could ask God directly for forgiveness, but why did they say, Ya Abana astaghfir lana? Our Father, seek forgiveness for us, because they know He is a prophet of God. He is a better wasila. So we can ask, and in the riwayat, it's suggested that the Anbiya Allah and Awliya, throughout the history, they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the best wasila, Muhammad and Ali Muhammad.
In the final video.
Yeah. Yes, so we do have a video in the Q&As. Some of you may be receiving them, and it is specific about wasila, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through their wasila. So, thank you. So. والحمد لله رب العالمين. سلم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
صل على محمد. محمد